Let me ask you something. Has your doctor ever told you to get a test, and deep down, something just didn't feel right? Maybe it was a scan or a screening or a just-to-be-safe checkup. You nodded and scheduled it, but a little voice inside whispered, "Do I really need this? At my age?" You're not alone. A lot of seniors feel that way. You sit there in the cold exam room wearing that paper gown that doesn't quite close in the back, and the doctor says, "Let's go ahead and schedule another test." No explanation, no real discussion. But here is the truth that most people won't tell you. After 70, not every test is your friend. In fact, some of them can actually do more harm than good. They can spark fear, they can lead to risky procedures, they can cause complications, and they can take away the peace of mind that you've spent a lifetime earning. It's a hard truth, but one we need to talk about. Because here is what usually happens. You think you're being responsible, proactive, doing the right thing. But in reality, you might be getting poked, prodded, and tested for things that, frankly, don't matter anymore. Things that could lead to stress, pain, or even surgeries you didn't need in the first place. And the worst part is most people, especially seniors, never even realize they have a choice. They just keep going through the motions. They do it out of trust. They do it out of fear. They do it out of habit. But today we're going to change that. We're going to talk honestly. We're going to pull back the curtain. And we're going to uncover 4 health checkups that seniors over 70 should seriously reconsider. These are tests you've probably heard of, maybe even had done. But we're going to break them down one by one so you can make smarter, safer choices from now on. This video could save you or someone you love from unnecessary pain. And it could help you reclaim a little more peace, a little more comfort, and a lot more control. So take a breath. This is not about fear, it's about freedom. It's about making choices that are right for you, not just following what's on someone else's checklist. And if you've ever questioned a medical decision, or if you're just trying to stay informed and protect your health as you age, I want you to comment, "I'm here" down below. Let me know you're listening, because this space is made for you. If you want more trustworthy guidance like this, real talk, backed by real care, subscribe to Age Well Tips for Seniors. Now let's get into it. Here are 4 health checkups you should think twice about after 70. And number 3 might actually surprise you. Let's start with colonoscopies. For many years, colon cancer screening was seen as one of the best things you could do to protect your health. And for adults between the ages of 50 and 70, that can absolutely be true. But once you pass 75, especially if you have no symptoms and no history of problems, the risks begin to outweigh the benefits. Let me share a real example. John was 78. His doctor said it was time for his routine colonoscopy. John had never had any major digestive issues. He felt fine, he stayed active and had a healthy diet. But because it had been 10 years since his last screening, he went ahead and scheduled it. The procedure seemed to go smoothly at first, but a few hours later, John began to feel dizzy. He passed out in his bathroom that evening. His wife called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors found internal bleeding, a complication from the procedure. John spent 3 days recovering in a hospital bed. After that, it took him weeks to regain his strength. The colonoscopy did not find any signs of cancer. There were no polyps, no concerns, nothing to treat. But the test still caused him pain, fear, and a slow recovery that took a toll on both him and his family. Stories like John's are more common than you might think. After age 75, the body becomes more sensitive to procedures like this. Sedation carries more risk. The colon lining becomes more fragile. And complications, such as bleeding or even bowel perforation, can happen more easily. Meanwhile, the chances of finding something dangerous drop significantly. If you have had normal screenings before and you do not have symptoms, the chances of finding aggressive colon cancer in your late 70s or 80s are very low. Most slow-growing polyps take years to become serious, and many never do. But here is the part that causes the most harm. Many people think they have no choice. They believe that skipping the test is irresponsible. They are afraid of what might happen if they don't catch something in time. So they say yes, again and again, without stopping to ask the most important question. Is this test still necessary? Because the truth is, after a certain age, screenings can create more problems than they solve. They can lead to fear, unnecessary treatments, or time spent recovering from procedures you may never have needed. This does not mean you should ignore your health. It means you should be thoughtful about which tools serve you best at this stage of life. So what can you do instead? If you are over 75 and in good health with no symptoms, ask your doctor whether you still need to continue colonoscopy screenings. In many cases, doctors will recommend stopping them altogether, especially if your past results were clear. If you do need to stay vigilant, there are less invasive alternatives available, such as stool-based tests that can be done at home. These carry far less risk and still give you useful information. The key is to remember that screening is not one size fits all. At this point in life, the goal is not just early detection. The goal is quality of life. It is comfort. It is peace of mind. It is knowing that every decision you make is thoughtful and tailored to you, not based on habit or fear. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Do not be afraid to say, "I want to understand my options." Your healthcare decisions are yours to make. And you deserve care that protects not just your years, but your dignity and peace. Now that we have taken a full look at colonoscopies after 75, let's explore the next test on our list. It is one that seems simple on the surface, but can open the door to a whole set of complications you never expected. Let's talk about full body scans. This is one of those checkups that sounds comforting at first. The idea of seeing everything at once, getting a clear picture of what's going on inside your body, can feel like you're taking control of your health. But after 70, it's important to pause and ask if it's really helping or just adding stress. Take Margaret, for example. She was 72 and in good health. She wasn't dealing with any symptoms. No pain, no fatigue, just regular checkups and a healthy routine. But one day, she saw an ad for a full-body scan. It promised early detection, peace of mind, and cutting-edge technology. It sounded smart, so she went for it. The scan was over in less than an hour. A few days later, the clinic called. They told her they found a small spot near her kidney. It was probably nothing, they said, but they couldn't be sure without a follow-up test. So Margaret went in for another scan. That led to a biopsy. The biopsy led to more waiting, and all that waiting led to anxiety. Weeks passed, and finally the results came in. The spot was benign, not cancer, not harmful, something many people her age have without even knowing it. But by that time, Margaret had already been through a minor surgical procedure. She had been poked and sedated, she had lost sleep, she had worried herself sick, and she had spent hundreds of dollars on tests she never really needed. That's what full-body scans can do. They don't always bring peace of mind. In many cases, they bring fear. And more importantly, they often bring false positives. A false positive is when a scan picks up something that looks dangerous, but really isn't. In older adults, this happens more often than you'd expect. That's because as the body ages, it develops harmless changes, little spots, calcifications, cysts, things that are part of natural aging, not disease. But once a machine sees them, they get flagged. And once they're flagged, most people feel pressure to act. Even when there's no real danger, the uncertainty pushes people into more tests, more appointments, and sometimes treatments they didn't need in the first place. This is called overdiagnosis. It means detecting conditions that would never have caused symptoms or harmed you in your lifetime. And the problem is, once a diagnosis is made, it often leads to overtreatment. Overtreatment means being treated for something that wasn't going to hurt you. But now, the treatment itself becomes the problem. It can lead to pain, side effects, or complications that could have been avoided. This is why most major health organizations do not recommend routine full-body scans for healthy people. Not in your 70s, not even in your 60s. There is no evidence that they improve outcomes in people without symptoms. And there is strong evidence that they lead to unnecessary procedures and emotional distress. Now, let's be honest. We live in a culture where finding things early is seen as the gold standard. We are taught that more screening means more protection. But in real life, that is not always the case. Especially when you're older and your body is changing in natural ways. Early detection only helps when it leads to meaningful action. When it catches something that truly needs to be treated, and when the treatment is safe and effective for someone your age. So what should you do instead? If you're feeling well, and your doctor has not found anything concerning during a physical exam or a targeted test, then a full body scan probably isn't necessary. Instead of asking, what if something's hiding in there? Try asking, what would we do if we found something? That one question can change the entire conversation. What will this scan help us do differently? If the answer isn't clear, that's a sign the test may not be helpful. You are not a machine. You are not a checklist. You are a person with a long, valuable life behind you, and still much more to live for. That life deserves peace. It deserves protection. And it deserves medical care that makes sense for where you are now, not just where you were 20 years ago. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is not scan everything. Sometimes protecting your peace is more valuable than chasing what might be. And speaking of unnecessary tests, the next one might surprise you, especially if your doctor keeps recommending it year after year. It's a test most men over 50 are familiar with, but after 70, it may be time to reconsider. Let's talk about PSA testing. Now let's talk about PSA testing. If you're a man over 70, or if you love someone who is, chances are you've heard of this test. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It's a simple blood test, often part of routine checkups for older men. And for years, it was considered a reliable way to catch prostate cancer early. But what many people don't realize is that this test, while simple on the surface, can open the door to a complicated and sometimes unnecessary medical journey. Take Henry, for example. He was 74, retired, and in good health. His doctor suggested a PSA test during a routine exam. There were no symptoms, no pain, no urinary problems, just a suggestion to be safe. The test came back showing slightly elevated PSA levels. The doctor said it might be nothing, but it could also mean prostate cancer. To be sure, Henry was sent for a biopsy. That's when things started to go downhill. The biopsy caused an infection which led to a high fever. He ended up in the hospital for 2 nights. After that, he developed lingering bladder issues, frequent urges, difficulty urinating, disrupted sleep. All of this from a test that found no cancer. Just a scare, followed by weeks of discomfort and stress. Henry's story is not unusual. Prostate cancer is one of the slowest growing cancers in men. In fact, many men over 70 who are diagnosed with it will never experience symptoms. They will never need treatment, and they will never die from it. But once the PSA levels show something abnormal, most people feel pressure to act. That pressure often leads to biopsies, which can cause infection or bleeding. If cancer is found, it can lead to surgery or radiation, and the side effects from those treatments can be life-changing. Incontinence, erectile dysfunction, chronic pain, emotional strain. This is the part that's so often misunderstood. People believe that early detection always leads to better outcomes. But with prostate cancer in older men, that isn't always true. In fact, for many seniors, the treatments for prostate cancer can cause more suffering than the disease itself ever would. So the question becomes, why are we still doing this test for men in their 70s or 80s who have no symptoms and no family history? That's exactly why many medical guidelines now recommend against routine PSA screening in older men, unless there is a clear reason to do it. The risks simply outweigh the potential benefits for most. It's not about ignoring cancer. It's about understanding your personal risk and being honest about what matters most at this stage in life. If you are healthy and symptom-free, the test might not give you peace of mind. It might give you confusion and fear. And if the results lead to treatment, that treatment could change your quality of life in ways you never expected. So what should you do instead? If your doctor suggests a PSA test, ask them to explain your risk. Ask if you have a family history, ask if you have symptoms that justify the test, and ask what happens next if the result is slightly elevated. Make sure you understand what doors this test might open before you walk through them. The goal is not to avoid all tests. The goal is to choose the ones that make sense for you, ones that will protect your health without harming your comfort or peace. By age 70, your health plan should reflect your values. You deserve care that respects the life you've lived and the one you still want to enjoy. And now, let's move to our final checkup. This one often seems harmless. It's recommended all the time, And it usually starts when you mention something as common as back pain. But in many cases, it leads to decisions that do more harm than healing. Let's take a closer look at frequent imaging for back pain. Now let's talk about back pain, specifically the way it's often handled with scans like MRIs and CTs. Back pain is incredibly common among seniors, whether it's a dull ache in the lower back, stiffness in the morning, or discomfort after sitting too long. It happens to nearly everyone at some point. And when it does, the first thing many doctors do is order an imaging test. That's exactly what happened to Linda. She was 76, healthy, and still enjoyed gardening and walking with her neighbor every afternoon. But after one long weekend of yard work, she noticed her lower back was sore. Nothing sharp, nothing unbearable, just a nagging discomfort that lingered. She went to her doctor, expecting some stretches or maybe a heat pack. Instead, the doctor quickly recommended an MRI. Linda had never had one before, but she agreed. The MRI showed disc degeneration in her spine, some narrowing, some joint changes. The radiologist described it as mild to moderate. Her doctor referred her to a spine specialist. That specialist recommended surgery. Linda was confused. She had walked into the office with a little soreness and was now being told that her spine needed correction. Thankfully, she paused. She asked questions. She got a second opinion. The second doctor looked at the same scan and told her the truth. What showed up on the MRI was common, completely expected for someone in her 70s. It was likely not the cause of her discomfort at all. She started physical therapy instead. She learned a few stretches, changed the way she lifted things, and began walking with better posture. A few weeks later, the pain faded. No surgery, no hospital stay, no risk of complications, just a smarter approach to care. Linda's story is important because it highlights something a lot of people don't know. MRIs and other imaging tests often reveal things that look serious, but aren't actually causing pain. In older adults, it's normal to have disc degeneration, joint changes, and narrowing of spaces between bones. These are part of natural aging. They are not necessarily signs of a problem. But once something shows up on a scan, it tends to create urgency. It looks scary. It feels like something must be done. And in many cases, that something becomes surgery, even when it may not help. Sometimes it even makes things worse. Back surgeries in older adults come with real risks. Recovery can be long, there can be infections, nerve damage, and in some cases, more pain than before. And too often, the original cause of the discomfort turns out to be muscle tension, poor posture, or weakness that could have been addressed without surgery. There's a common belief that scans equal answers, but that's not always true. In fact, with back pain, scans often create more questions. And when we rely on imaging alone, we risk focusing on what the picture shows, rather than what the person actually feels. So what's the better way forward? If you have new back pain and no warning signs like numbness, loss of bladder control, or major weakness, try conservative treatment first. Gentle physical therapy, daily movement, posture adjustments, heat or cold therapy. Sometimes a small change in daily habits makes a big difference. And before agreeing to imaging, ask your doctor one important question. Will this scan change how we treat the pain? If the answer is no, then maybe it's not needed. Maybe your body just needs time, movement, and support. Not a machine, not a label, and certainly not a scalpel. Back pain can be frustrating. It can limit what you enjoy, but the solution isn't always found in a scan. It's often found in slow, steady steps towards strength and balance. Now that we've covered these 4 risky checkups, let's shift our focus, because making these decisions isn't just about information. It's also about emotion. It's about how it feels to question your doctor, how it feels to say no to a test, how it feels to protect your peace instead of chasing every possible what if. Let's talk about that part, and why you are not alone in feeling overwhelmed or unsure. This next section is just for you. Let's take a moment to talk about what all of this really means. Because making these kinds of decisions is not easy. It's hard to say no when a doctor recommends a test. It's hard to ask questions. It's hard to pause and wonder if what's being offered is truly right for you. Especially when you've spent your whole life trusting medical advice, following the rules, and doing what you thought was best for your health. It's even harder when you feel like saying no could be dangerous. like you're gambling with your future or risking something important. The truth is, that pressure is real. That fear is real. Nobody wants to miss something. Nobody wants to be the one who didn't catch it early. But here's what we need to understand. Choosing not to have a test is not the same as ignoring your health. It's not giving up. It's not being careless. It's being smart. It's being intentional. It's recognizing that at this stage of life, your goals have shifted. It's not just about adding more years. It's about making sure the years you have left feel meaningful, peaceful, and full of dignity. You're not just managing a body, you're protecting a life you've worked hard to build. You're protecting your energy, your comfort, your ability to wake up without fear or confusion. That's why informed choices matter so much. You're not walking away from care, you're choosing the kind of care that fits you, not the person you were 20 years ago. The person you are now. This is the point where you take the lead. This is when you speak up, not out of rebellion, but out of wisdom. If a doctor recommends a test, try asking this one question: what happens if I don't do it? That one sentence can open a different kind of conversation. It shows that you want to understand, that you're taking your health seriously. But it also reminds your provider that your time, your body, and your peace of mind matter too. And if the answer to that question isn't clear, that's a sign it might be okay to wait, or to skip it altogether. You are allowed to weigh the risks. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to ask for options that make sense for your age, your lifestyle, and your values. You have more power than you think. Because aging isn't about fear. It's not about panic. It's not about chasing every possibility. It's about making choices that honor your story. Choices that protect the life you have built with care, sacrifice, and love. You deserve to feel in control of your care. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to feel like your doctor is working with you, not just talking at you. So take a breath. Give yourself credit. These decisions aren't easy, but the fact that you're here, listening, learning, and thinking deeply about your health, that means something. That means you're not passive. You're engaged. And that kind of mindset is what leads to better outcomes, better conversations, and a better life. Now let's bring everything we've learned together and talk about what to do next. Let's take a moment to bring everything together. To quickly recap, the 4 health checkups you may want to reconsider after age 70 are colonoscopies, full body scans, PSA tests, and frequent imaging for back pain. Each of these tests might sound harmless or helpful, especially if you've done them in the past. But as you get older, your body changes, your goals shift, and the risks from these procedures can begin to outweigh the benefits. Colonoscopies after 75 carry higher risks, and the chances of finding something serious get much lower if you've had clear results in the past. Full body scans often pick up harmless findings, but those findings can lead to stress, unnecessary procedures, and emotional toll. PSA tests for prostate cancer can open a door to treatments that impact quality of life, even when the cancer itself might never have caused harm. And frequent imaging for back pain may show age-related changes that don't need fixing, but still lead to surgery, cost, and complications. So if you're over 70 and you're not experiencing symptoms, it may be time to ask your doctor some new questions. Not because you're ignoring your health, but because you're taking the lead in protecting it. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you or someone close to any of these tests? Was it helpful, or did it end up causing more harm than good? Share your story in the comments below. You never know who might be watching this video and feeling unsure or overwhelmed. Your story could be the one that helps someone feel less alone and more empowered. And if this video helped you make a more informed decision, or even gave you something new to think about, please give it a like. It's a small action, but it really helps this message reach others who need it. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to Age Well Tips for Seniors. We are building a thoughtful, supportive community of people who care about their health, their choices, and their peace of mind as they age. Here we don't chase fear, we chase clarity, we chase calm, we chase care that honors the full story of your life. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I know these conversations can feel heavy at times, but they matter. You matter. Your health journey doesn't end at 70, it simply evolves. and it deserves to be guided by wisdom, not worry. Stay smart, stay strong, and above all, stay kind to yourself. I'll see you in the next video.